agenda today to really help dive in on some more of those fine details of Cancer Action Day. So I am going to go ahead and get started, even though some folks are still probably logging on. I'm going to share my presentation mode now. So give me 1 second to pull that up for all of you. And hopefully you are able to see my slide deck and me. Can someone give me a thumbs up or a yes off chat? Awesome. Thanks, Barb. Um, so again, welcome everyone to our final Q&A training session for Ohio's Cancer Action Day. For those of you that I've not met yet, my name is Sarah Morris, and I am your Ohio Grassroots Manager. Hopefully, you have seen my face in a video from the guidebook that was sent out, but really appreciate you taking the time not only to review that guidebook, but to join us for this session today. Um, the intent really is for this to be a safe space for you to ask questions and for us to kind of talk a little bit more in detail beyond the guidebook about what to expect when we're all together in exactly 1 week from today in Columbus for Cancer Action Day. So thank you for taking the time to log on and join us, and know that we want this, again, to be a place where you can ask your questions and lean on not only me, but also your mentors in the next week before we're all together in person. So to kick us off, I want to share our team. Again, this was in your guidebook, but Leo Almeida is my counterpart, our Ohio Government Relations Director. And I like to say that Leo is our guy at the State House. So he works very closely with our lawmakers and their staff. And again, I'm Sarah, your Ohio Grassroots Manager, who helps coordinate with all of you, our phenomenal advocates and volunteers across the state. We do have two key leaders. Pam Neese and Vince Marchetta are our state lead and vice state lead ambassadors. So between us, when you arrive next week, if you need a familiar face to ask questions, please flag one of us down. We are here to help and appreciate, again, your willingness to join us and to share your stories with our lawmakers when we're all together in Columbus. So today's session, we're just going to kind of go into more detail, like I shared, about what to expect, some overviews about your meetings and our issues, really allowing you time to ask us any questions that you have about those 4 issue asks that we have this year, and review a little bit of what to expect after you've had your meeting or meetings and open it up for your questions. So, diving in, arriving to Columbus, especially if you're a first timer with us for Cancer Action Day, I wanted to make this as detailed as I could, remembering what it was like when I joined for my first Ohio Cancer Action Day, and really showing you where to go and what to expect. So, check-in will be available from 8 to 8:45 in the morning. And again, if you've never been to the Sheraton Columbus, located at Capitol Square, I wanted to provide kind of a visual here of a photo from Google Maps, so you know the best place to enter the building and the easiest way to find us in our conference room. So I recommend, regardless of where you park, that you try to find this entrance of the Sheraton, and this is off of East State Street. And again, this is a visual for you right from Google. You can see the Sheraton and Starbucks sign there on the side of the building, and that tree area is where the rotating doors are located to enter the hotel. So I really recommend using this entrance when you arrive to come find us for check-in. We will be located in the executive conference room, which when you walk in through those rotating doors is the first conference room on the left. So hopefully you'll be able to find us pretty quickly. But we will have signs and some greeters, volunteers there that can help guide you to find where we'll be set up. I definitely recommend that you wear comfortable shoes. Of course, the attire is business casual, but keep in mind that you will be walking from our hub at the Sheraton across the street to the State House. if you have senator meetings, and just down the road to the Rife Center if you have House of Representative meetings. So really think about those shoes and pack according to weather. Hopefully, weather is as amazing as it has been the last few days, and we have beautiful sunshine spring. But I will recommend being prepared for if you have to have a jacket in the morning because it's chillier, a umbrella if it is raining, because you will be doing that walking back and forth between buildings. So make sure you pack accordingly for what the weather will be that we're anticipating next Tuesday. As far as parking goes and just arrival, I highly recommend you give yourself ample time to find a parking spot to be able to walk over to the Sheraton and get checked in with us. Sometimes Columbus traffic can be busy right around that 8 a.m. time frame. So just keep all of that in mind and make sure you're planning accordingly to work through that and navigate finding us at the Sheraton. What you can expect when you do find us. You're going to find us at some check in tables where we will give you folders, one for you yourself as a volunteer that will be filled with resources for you for the day. That you can use as reference points and to review. And then we'll give you a lawmaker folder per meeting that you have. You'll also get a name tag. And then we're going to do a bingo activity. Hopefully, you saw that in the guidebook, which is new for this year, where we want you to interact and meet and greet with other advocates in the room once you arrive and try to fill bingo across a card. You can continue doing this beyond the morning. I want to make sure I emphasize that. Knowing that we have just that hour for check in before our 9 a.m. morning presentation will begin, know that you can keep working on the bingo card and mingling with your peers and other advocates through lunch. So hang on to those if you don't get bingo right away in the morning, and keep talking to each other and filling out those cards throughout the rest of the day. You can turn those into us at the check-in table, and for everyone that does fill it out and gets bingo, we have an ACS can item for you as a prize. Your tables, when you do walk into the room after you leave check-in, are going to be set up by your Senate districts. So pay attention to those signs that are on the tables and find your Senate district and grab some breakfast and then enjoy that meet and greet, find an advocate who bingo activity. One thing I do want to highlight about our name tags this year is thanks to Pam Neese and Pam Mangus, two of our volunteers. They have created cancer ribbons specific for anyone that's wanting to represent a certain cancer for the day or cancers. I know we've all been impacted by cancer in some way, whether you personally, a family member, friend, coworker, and we thought that this would be kind of a meaningful way we could add something special to our name tags that not only we can see, but our lawmakers as well. So when you are getting checked in, if you want to add a cancer ribbon or two, or as many as you'd like to your name tag, we'll also have labels for survivor, caregiver, and then supporter for you to be able to add to those cancer ribbons as well. And again, I think this will just be a really special visual for all of us as we're getting to know each other, to be able to talk about our stories in more details and with our lawmakers and their staff during our meetings. So I wanted to make sure I noted that about name tags and something for you to grab from the check-in table as well before you get settled in. Speaking about those folders in a bit more detail, what can you expect to be in them? This is just an overview of both the volunteer folder that you'll get and what will be inside your lawmaker folders. We'll have the fact sheets that were in your guidebook on the issues, our four asks. We will have those printed for you and in your volunteer folder. We will also have those in a different version that we call a palm card. So in case you don't want to look at the full fact sheet and all of its details, we have pulled out some of those top priority details and little facts and put it on a palm size card that's about the size quarter sheet to make it a little bit easier to hold if you do want to look down and reference something during your meetings. Um, Again, you can use either the full fact sheet or the palm card. Just know whatever you're comfortable with, that those resources are there for you, and you don't have to memorize anything by any means. We will also have your lawmaker social media handles. So throughout the day, if you want to quickly review this document, we've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram of any of the lawmakers we know that are on social. So you can tag them and us with ACS Can if you are doing any posting throughout the day. You'll also have my business card and then some blank business cards that are ACS Can printed. So in case you don't have your own personal business cards to bring, you can quickly fill out some of these blank business cards that we'll provide for you, because we highly recommend that you give those to your lawmakers or their staff during your meetings. You'll also find a QR code that we hope you'll access for your report back form. So after every meeting, quickly pulling that up and letting us know how the meetings went. These will also be set up at the tables throughout the room for you to access, and we'll have a laptop station set up as well in case you're not able to pull it up on your smartphone or just want a bigger screen to type on. You can come see us at those laptops as well. We will provide the thank you cards for you to use. So in your downtime after meetings and between meetings, we would love for you to write your lawmakers or their staff. And we provide you those thank you cards. And you can leave those with us in a basket at the check-in tables, and we'll make sure that we get them to your lawmakers and their staff and their appropriate offices after Cancer Action Day. We're also going to have a guidebook for you, a few-page guidebook on what to do after Cancer Action Day. So how you can keep continuing to make an impact beyond our day together next Tuesday. So please make sure you reference that after you leave us in Columbus, and look at some of the tips and tricks on things that you can do after our event. And we'll also have a reimbursement form for you for parking and driving and travel. So please make sure that you fill that out and turn it into us if you would like. In the lawmaker folders, they will have different fact sheets than you. So these are tailored to them from Leo about our issues. We will also have a storybook of some really phenomenal stories across Ohio that we have collected for individuals and advocates that have been impacted by biomarker testing. So since that's one of our major issues and asks this year, we have printed that storybook for them, hoping that the lawmakers will read those stories and know that there are Ohioans that are from our group that have benefited from this issue and that testing. We'll also provide the coalition sign-on letter as a reference for the lawmakers so they can see all the other groups that have joined ACS Can in support of biomarker testing legislation. Leo's business cards will be in these folders, again, since he's our guy at the State House who works with the lawmakers and their staff. And as I mentioned from your folders, please fill out those blank business cards if you don't have any that you'll be bringing on your own. And make sure you leave your business card as well, in addition to Leo's, because the lawmakers do like to reach back out to constituents. So that's just one of those recommendations that we have for you. Going back and kind of talking about parking, I wanted to highlight some tips and tricks that I've learned over the years in my years of attending our Ohio Cancer Action Day. And that's that the first two options that we gave you in your guidebook for parking at the State House and the Rife Center can fill up pretty quickly around that 8 a.m. time frame. So unless you're planning to arrive earlier, because a lot of lawmakers and staff do use those for their own parking as well to go to work. We have found that the Columbus Commons, those two options, though they're just a few blocks a little further to walk, generally don't fill up as quickly. But there are also a lot of surface lots nearby that I wanted to make sure I highlighted. I have always gotten lucky across the State House in one of the corner surface lots for all day parking. So please just make sure, again, you're giving yourself ample time to kind of find one of these options and walk over to us at the Sheraton for check-in. These links were provided in your guidebook with direct access to Google Maps. So hopefully before you arrive, if you're able to click on those and kind of save the addresses, that might help you quickly be able to navigate finding these various options on Tuesday morning. Does anyone have questions about arrival and check-in before I dive into what our morning presentation will look like? Please feel free to come off mute if you do have any questions. No? Okay,
Oh,
so
sorry. Hi
as
there. I'm sorry. This is
okay.
Angela. I'm not sure, Sarah, if you got my note from last week, but there's I don't the people may want to check. You may want to check the Rife because I
We
think
did.
that is closed to the public.
We
So I
did.
don't. I
They
would.
have Yeah, they have some availability, but like I mentioned, a lot of the staff, it seems, will fill that quickly. So the gate would be closed and no one would be able to enter if they've arrived at a time that it is shut off from the public.
Okay.
Yeah, so I definitely, like I said, don't recommend unless you're there very early, options 1 and 2. I would definitely look at the commons or those surrounding surface lots because that's a really great point, Angela. Good question. Okay, well, I'll dive into the morning presentation here quickly. Once you have found us and you have had breakfast and are doing your bingo meet and greet with fellow advocates right at 9 a.m., we will start our presentation. So we just ask that you grab your seat at your Senate district tables. We will have a lapel pin for everyone that I'm wearing here and an ACS CAN lanyard. So every seat will have one of those. Please feel free to take those and represent ACS CAN throughout the day and wear those. You'll hear from some really amazing guest speakers in the morning, including a cancer survivor sharing her story. You'll hear from 2 of our lawmakers. Every year, we have given awards to 2 lawmakers that have really partnered with us with ACS CAN. And so this year, you will hear from Rep. Andrea White and from Senator Nikki Antonio, who we will be recognizing. And then we'll have a few other guest speakers, some other advocates giving you some advice and tips for the day before you head out to your meetings. We do know that there have been 2 or 3 scenarios where some 9:30 a.m. meetings were all that were available for lawmakers. So I will let these groups know who is impacted by this, but there are a couple 9:30 a.m. meetings, and we know that you'll sadly have to slip away in the middle of our morning presentation. Um, but again, everyone that's impacted will know. I'll make sure to reach out to all of you and let you know. And for everyone, my intention by the end of the week is to try to let you know your tentative schedule. So we still are getting lawmaker meetings set every day here, every hour. We're seeing more and more roll in. But I would like everyone to be able to know currently your meetings that we have set. So please be on the lookout for an email from me by the end of the week with what your current tentative meetings are, just so you have a little bit of insider's knowledge and feel a little bit more comfortable on what to expect for your day. We will start with a group photo for this morning presentation. Because we know that there are a handful of you that will be impacted by those 9:30 a.m. meetings, we want to make sure that we get a group photo of everyone in the room to start. So we will take a group photo in the conference room. But for anyone that is with us still at the conclusion of the presentation, we would like to walk over together for an outside photo in front of the State House. So if you don't have a meeting right away at 9:30 or 10 a.m., please join us and we'll make announcements about this and have some people that help us navigate walking over for us to take a second group photo outside. If you are slipping away and going to your meetings, don't forget to take your folders. This is, of course, for everyone, but make sure you have your volunteer folder to reference and 1 folder per lawmaker meeting. Make sure you're giving yourself ample time to walk over to your locations. So I did want to highlight a little bit more in detail. I know this was in the guidebook, but if you have a House of Representative meeting at the Rife Center, security does take a little longer there because you have to show your ID, and they will print you a little label at security to get up to your floors to meet with your House of Representatives. At the State House, you just walk through a security area. You do not have to show your ID. But one thing I can tell you about the State House, at least in my years of joining Cancer Action Day, is that it can be kind of hard to find some of the room numbers in the State House. And it's a little intimidating, especially if you're not there very often. So, my best advice at the State House is right when you walk through security, just ask one of the security guards or the staff where to go, giving them the room number that you need. And they are always more than happy to help share exactly the easiest way to find that room number. So the Rife Center, though you have to show your ID and it takes a little bit longer, once you go up the escalators, the floors are pretty cut and dry because there are elevators. But at the State House, just make sure you're asking people right when you walk in, and that will save you some time trying to wander around and find some of those State House room numbers. So again, I mentioned there are a couple 9:30 a.m. meetings. Right now, it's looking like in the morning, before lunch, a lot of our senator meetings have been scheduled at the State House. And then after lunch, they shift over to House of Representative meetings. Right now, the latest meeting we've seen is a 3:30. So that 9:30 to 3:30 timeframe is what it'll look like for the day. Again, with Senate meetings in the morning and House meetings in the afternoon. Our goal is to try to make sure that each of you have at least one meeting scheduled, whether that's with your senator or your representative. But in some scenarios, we hope that we can get you a meeting with both of your lawmakers. You may meet directly with the lawmaker or their staff, or in some scenarios, both. The lawmaker may invite their staff to come in to the meeting. Right now, majority of the meetings are 30 minutes, but there are one or two scenarios where the lawmaker was only able to set aside 15 minutes for an appointment. Um, so know that we'll make sure you know what your schedule is again, so you'll know whether you have 30 minutes or 15 minutes. But this is why it's so crucial that you practice with your groups, your hook, line, and sinker for the day, and coordinating with your mentor and those other advocates so you know who is going to be taking each issue and sharing and making that ask in advance before next Tuesday. So if you haven't heard from your mentor for any reason, please reach out to me directly and I can help with that. But they're really there to make sure that you and your group are prepared. And in some scenarios, the mentor's schedule may work that they can join you and your group for the meeting, but in most scenarios, they won't be in the meeting with you, but you'll always have someone else with you, again, another advocate. And that's just why we really encourage you to practice together and coordinate because we don't have very long meetings. 30 minutes, 15 minutes is going to go by very quickly with 4 asks. So we just want to make sure that you're feeling comfortable and prepared. And that's why we really encourage you to use your mentor and that hook, line, and sinker worksheet that was provided in your guidebook so that you can write those pieces out, the sections that you might be taking within your group, and you can practice reading those and referencing them before you arrive and have your meetings. But don't worry if you need to use your fact sheets and palm cards and your written out hook, line, and sinker as a reference. Your lawmakers know that you're volunteers and you're by no means expected to be experts in all of these issues. So please feel comfortable to use your resources and your materials and know that you have other advocates in the room to lean on if you get slipped up and help you when you're in those meetings and making the asks. If you are asked a question by your lawmaker that you don't know the answer to, use your references and those fact sheets and palm cards. Maybe the information is on there that you can reference, but it's okay to just say, again, you're a volunteer and maybe you don't know the answer. But that's why we have Leo. And as our government relations director, he can follow up after the meeting and make sure that your lawmaker or their staff get all the information that they need. So it's just imperative that you write down any of those questions that they ask, and you make sure to put it in your report back form when you get back to the Sheraton and are able to fill those out after your meetings so that we know where we need to do follow-ups and which lawmakers to reach out to. At the conclusion of your meeting, make sure you're giving them their folder. So after they get to hear from you and hear about your stories and why you support our issues, those folders for them can be additional resources for them to review. And I really encourage you to ask if you're comfortable to take a picture with them. And a lot of our lawmakers love to put pictures on their social media as well whenever they're meeting with constituents. So definitely don't forget to ask them if they're comfortable taking a photo with you. Leave your folder behind with your business cards and all the information. Um, and make sure you report back any questions and let us know how the meetings go and your report back forms. I mentioned the hook, line, and sinker. Again, this was really covered in depth in your guidebook. This is just our strategy and approach to making your meeting successful and effective. Again, knowing we only get 30 minutes in most scenarios, sometimes 15 minutes. And because we have multiple lines or our issues and asks, our sinkers, it can go very quickly, 30 minutes. So please, please, please lean on your mentor, lean on the other people in your group, and practice all together prior to next Tuesday. I know a lot of mentors have scheduled meetings here in the next couple of days and week. But again, if you haven't heard from your mentor for some reason, just reach out to me and we can talk through that and make sure you feel prepared before arriving next Tuesday on the 18th. Before we dive into each of the issues, are there any questions or thoughts about what to expect for your meetings? No? Okay, well, this is the time of the session to really just open it up for you. We'll go through the issues and allow you to ask any questions that you might have. Again, the fact sheets were linked in your guidebook that really have a bunch of stats and facts that Leo put together about each of these issues. So again, review those. They'll be printed in your folders for you to reference. But essentially, we'll start with biomarker testing. This is what I would say is kind of the key ask for us this year and an issue that's newer for us in introduction. So a lot of education is obviously needed with our group and lawmakers on this really important issue. We are asking our lawmakers to support, there is a current bill that's been assigned, House Bill 24. This currently is assigned to our House Insurance Committee, and it is we have gone through two of the three needed testimony hearings for this issue for the insurance committee to then vote on it and hopefully pass it to go to the full house for a vote. So 2 weeks ago we had our second hearing where we had 6 Ohio storytellers from ACS Can go before the House Insurance Committee and share their stories. And wow, was it an emotional, amazing experience to get to have these storytellers in front of our lawmakers on that committee. The next hearing, the third hearing, which is where they hear from opponents of the bill, um, could essentially be as early as the day after our Cancer Action Day. So it could be as early as April 19th, which makes our day of Cancer Action Day even more important because we want to have everyone hear from us before those potential opponents could share in the third testimony hearing. We are asking for coverage of this really important biomarker testing across all public and private insurance plans. Currently, biomarker testing is just really a wide variety and array of coverage right now. So what biomarker testing is a sample analysis of either tissue or blood, and it can provide insight to not only just cancer, but other autoimmune, rare arthritis diseases. It is essentially the ability to provide a patient and their doctor um, insight to the best treatment at the right time to treat that specific cancer that a patient is fighting. I can say that I am a survivor of acute myeloid leukemia, and 15 years ago, this wasn't something that my oncologist and I talked about or had as a resource, but I can only imagine knowing that insight of what type of therapy or targeted treatment would work to treat my AML. We more or less just went with the standard protocol and hoped that it worked, and thank goodness it did. But what we're seeing is so many examples of the insight that this full panel biomarker testing can provide for a patient that gives them better quality of life. In the end, ends up saving thousands of dollars because you're not guessing on what type of treatment would be effective, and just time, which is so important through a cancer diagnosis. We provided this image that I really loved in the guidebook that I think visually really helps understand this type of comprehensive biomarker testing. So hopefully you saw this in your guidebook where it shows kind of a timeline of a lung cancer patient example of guessing again on a treatment chemotherapy plan, so many ER visits after that, doing single tests to see, is this mutation present? Is this mutation present? Um, and in the end, if a full panel comprehensive biomarker test had been done to show that this specific mutation for this lung cancer was present, that could have saved nearly a year, again, of quality of life, time, and money in the end for this particular patient. And this is where I think our storybook that we will have of patients that we'll be providing to the lawmakers in their folders is so important because they can hear real stories of advocates that we have from ACS CAN that can talk about the impact biomarker testing has made on their lives. I want to share one of those with you now. Alik Topalian is one of our advocates from Cincinnati, and I'm going to show you her story. And again, it's one of the many stories that are in our biomarker storybook. So let me pull that up.
My name is Alik Topalian. I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia in 1998 when I was 4 years old, and I am alive today because of biomarker testing. AML is a very aggressive cancer, and back then, it was much more rare in children than it is today. Getting a bone marrow transplant provides the highest odds of surviving AML. I am 100% Armenian, and that means that my best odds of finding a match are within the Armenian community. But in 1998, my parents couldn't find one, so they were desperate. Then my parents found a cancer center in Seattle that was doing one of the first pediatric biomarker studies. So they put my samples on ice, got on a plane, and took my samples to Seattle themselves. They got me admitted to the study. After being admitted to that biomarker study, I enrolled in a second study, an experimental treatment that helped to cure my cancer. 22 years later, I was once again diagnosed with AML. This is unheard of with AML, and my doctors were baffled. They did new biomarker testing and were able to compare the results to the 1998 testing. So we search again for an Armenian bone marrow donor, and again, 22 years later, still come up empty. Because we were unable to do a bone marrow transplant, my doctors decided to proceed with a tailored therapy based on my biomarker testing for the genetic makeup of my cancer. And I'm thankful to say that I am again in remission. Not everyone that gets AML gets to say that. It's a brutal disease. I know I'm lucky to be alive, but one thing that still gnaws at me is that initially my insurance company refused to pay for my biomarker testing, saying that it was not medically necessary. I didn't even know how to respond to that. Thanks to biomarker testing, I'm living a great life. I am working to help other patients like myself in a cancer center, And on my 1-year anniversary of being in remission, I got engaged to my best friend. Now I get to plan my wedding.
Again, Alik's story is just one of so many that shows how her biomarker testing and finding out about her tailored therapy made such an impact. And I want to add that Alik had to fight her insurance company over a year to have her testing covered, which you can imagine the strain already going through a medical leave and her treatment. You can just imagine that extra pressure that was put on her, and that's why we're fighting for this coverage. Are there any questions about biomarker testing before we go into our other issues?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment or maybe just something to raise. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me,
Yeah.
Sarah? Okay. I'm sorry. I was privy to some of the testimonies. I was listening to the testimonies of Kentucky, and I was privy to the work that they did, that they recently got their biomarker testing bill through. And so I know I'm new to this, but I just wondered if we get any cost concern comments from lawmakers, because obviously you mentioned Alik had a battle, of course, and so many people have. I mean, I think there are some points I was hearing people make that really were resonating with lawmakers, and it was that there really isn't a dramatic cost impact to the insurers, unlike what they're probably going to say. So how can we? There's, what tools can we use? And I mean, that we can maybe share some that we've seen. But Sarah, what would your recommendation be?
Absolutely. So I will say that is probably the number one question that comes up is cost. How much is it going to cost insurance providers per member per month? And by no means do we want you to have to answer those directly because Leo, what I will say, has very great resources that can give those exact numbers depending on if it's Medicare, Medicaid, all the different things. But overall, as volunteers, what you can say is it is dimes, pennies per member per month. I mean, it's a small amount. And again, in our recent testimony 2 weeks ago, we had Dr. Mehmet from OSU, the James, share that just one of her treatments that she provides as a lung oncologist is $30,000. So you can imagine if she didn't have biomarker testing on her patients and she was just going off the standard of care, to know if that $30,000 treatment was even going to be effective in the long run. Again, our answer is that they're not even comparable and what the cost savings could be, though there will be a very minimal amount that has to be provided and that goes up for the insurance companies per member per month. But in the long run, this is really about quality of life and time. Again, I think that's the biggest thing to also highlight is how much time can be saved, which for a cancer patient is crucial to not have to guess on treatment types um, because the cancer could be spreading and a lot of things can be happening in that time that is passing.
Absolutely. I think quality of life is huge. And I think you also probably hit something too. I was just thinking efficiency and effectiveness is probably going to also resonate with them if we talk
Absolutely.
about that too, because that ultimately will drive costs in one ways or the other. So, okay. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. And I will add just also from the testimony, again, because the timing really works out for us. One of the representatives who was on the insurance committee came forward after all 6 of our advocates had shared, and she was in tears. And she said, I wasn't going to say anything. Her name's Rep. John. She said, but my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer over 20 years ago. And my brother and I have talked to her oncologist over the years. She sadly lost her battle. Um, and the oncologist had told them, instead of watching her fight for 3 years, a really terrible fight that had very low quality of life, if she had been diagnosed nowadays, that could have looked very different. And her journey would have looked really different. And her quality of life would have been not even comparable to what she had to go through 20 years ago. And it was really moving to hear the rep say that, to say that this is why I support this issue, and so should the rest of the committee, because I had to watch my mom have a terrible quality of life going through her treatment that ultimately wasn't effective. And maybe we could have known what a better tailored therapy could have been available to her. So we could have had better time spent with her and quality time spent with her.
Agreed.
Really good things to bring up and mention. Any other questions about biomarker testing? And we'll hop over to copay accumulator. Okay, let me get my presentation back up for you. Okay, so moving into copay accumulator. The biggest things I want to highlight about this, separate from what was in your guidebook, is that we still do not have reintroduction of this bill to the House, so we don't have a bill number. That's why you'll see House Bill X. That is still in the works, and in the next week, we could see movement, and maybe by Cancer Action Day morning, we could give you an update if we do have reintroduction of this bill. But currently we do not, so we'll be going in more or less asking for the support of the issue and letting our lawmakers know that once the bill is reintroduced, we hope that they'll support it. You can see there a bullet that was mentioned in your guidebook that this did pass through the House last year. So your representatives, if you have House of Representative meetings, will recognize this bill because last year they unanimously voted on it and it passed. We just did not finish it in the Senate. So when you're meeting with your House reps, that can be something you really lean in on. Is I know we don't have the reintroduction of the bill yet, but when it does get reintroduced, please support this issue like you did last year and get it passed through the House. And then we'll just be asking for the support of the senators, of course, to, when the bill is introduced, support. Essentially, the biggest things to mention about copay accumulator is that you can imagine going through cancer, the cost of some drugs that are life-saving drugs required for you to take, but they can be very costly, and it puts quite a financial burden on patients and their families. But fortunately, there are some programs, copay assistant programs, available to really relieve that financial burden for Ohioans. Sadly, though, that support of the copay assistance does not count towards Ohioans' out-of-pocket deductible max, still really putting a financial strain on them while they're trying to fight cancer and go through that journey. So that's why we're fighting for passage of copay accumulator so that those amounts can count towards out-of-pocket deductible maxes. 16 states have passed similar legislation to this, so I like to say that that's a pretty significant fact to also share with our lawmakers, and that, again, the House already passed this unanimously last year, so it should be easy to discuss with your representatives, and we'll just ask for their continued support of that once the bill is reintroduced this year. Are there any questions about copay accumulator?
I have one question. Sorry.
Sure.
What what if they ask us around this drive to higher cost drugs, again, trying to drive up costs? I can see some speculated lawmakers saying, I mean, Leo's probably addressing this. I know you've said that probably before about some of the details, but I mean, we probably have data on that too if we need to pull that, but how detailed should we get into that and what would you suggest?
So my suggestion always, unless you have a personal connection to this or see it in your realm of work, me as an average, what I would have called an average volunteer, attending Cancer Action Days in the past, I would just cover the issue and what you do know. I will say that a couple scenarios came up last year. I know for some individuals that not cancer related, but know other people that have been impacted by this for other different drugs for asthma. Um, there's a slew of examples probably, but I would keep it very basic to the issue unless you have, again, a personal connection or know someone that's been impacted directly. And if there are very specific questions like that, leaning on Leo is our best option so he can follow up and have one-on-one meetings with those particular lawmakers that ask those questions.
Okay, perfect.
Because he is armed with that exact data.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I figured he had it and maybe yeah, but that's great. In case they bring it up, I just want to be armed with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is Leo. You might also hear from a member a concern about raise in premiums because of this. That's kind of the common talking point that the Ohio Health Plan Association uses when they don't like a bill. So we've been hearing that quite a bit when we've had conversations about this. But we have not seen in those 16 states that have passed this legislation that this has caused premiums to go up in those states. And quite frankly, premiums go up all the time. So why not get something out of it that benefits everyday Ohioans? So if you hear that, you can kind of push back on that a little bit. And that, again, that information is available in our resources. But like Sarah said, we'll keep reiterating. If you feel uncomfortable answering that type of question, certainly utilize me and say that I'll follow back up with that member.
Thanks for jumping in, Leo. Super helpful. Any other thoughts before we go into our 2 budget asks?
I do have a question on the copay accumulator. I did actually have this happen to me in Ohio, but my insurance is through Michigan, so the $3,000 that I was able to save through copay assistance did count towards my deductible, and that was a huge, because I have a high deductible. It was huge. Like, it won't happen this year, but it was such a major savings, and I would love to see this for everybody, obviously. But so you do know somebody if you want to talk about it. I'm here.
Thank you so much for sharing, and you're definitely not alone. We have an advocate, Julie Turner, who is with us in Ohio, really helping push this issue. And so, yes, thank you for being willing and open to share that. And hopefully that helps all of you other advocates to share some of those examples that you're hearing when you are in your meetings. So we'll jump into the 2 budget asks. What I want to say about these, again, just some inside knowledge. What the verbiage currently there for the ask, supporting the current provision in the budget bill. So you all know what that means is essentially Governor DeWine, our governor, has set his proposed budget that then goes to the House to review and then to the Senate. We are fortunate that in Governor DeWine's current provision of the budget, both of our budget asks we got the amounts that we were asking for. So for our budget asks, it makes it a little bit easier. We still have to fight for them, right? We have to say, please don't change Governor DeWine's current provision in the budget and keep the funding amount at these numbers. So I wanted to make sure that I shared that. So for the tobacco prevention and cessation ask, we are asking for an increase of 5.5 million per year for a total of 20 million per fiscal year. As you all know and can imagine, and you've seen the stats here from the guidebook, smoking is the single largest contributing risk factor to cancer. And for us in Ohio, it's estimated that 20,200 Ohio adults will die from smoking every year. You can see the costs associated, estimated for the state. I think those are really important facts to pull out. That's $6.56 billion in healthcare costs and $1.85 billion in Medicaid costs annually. But I think we all can find stories that we know, related to tobacco. So sharing those personal stories is really what resonates to the lawmakers, and just talking about the importance of us having the ample funding for that prevention and cessation in our state. The other ask is around our breast and cervical cancer project. So this is a continued funding ask of the same amount that we currently have at $1.1 million for fiscal year 24, and then a slight increase for 2025 at 1.2 million. So in Ohio, the Breast and Cervical Cancer Project helps underinsured or uninsured Ohioans find access to screening and then essentially healthcare system support if they are diagnosed with either breast or cervical cancer. For us in Ohio, breast cancer is the leading cancer for women. And you can see those numbers there of how many are impacted by both breast and cervical cancer diagnoses. But the biggest fact here to really lean in on is that we know access to screenings saves lives. And we know that early detection is key to increasing an individual's chance of surviving cancer. So unfortunately, being underinsured or uninsured limits your ability to be able to have access to those cancer screenings. So that's why this project is so important for us in the state of Ohio. Any questions about either of those budget asks? No? Okay, well, just a few other key items to highlight. We will provide lunch, a buffet set up outside of our executive conference room at the Sheraton. So between your meetings, whatever timing works best for you, it'll be open from 11:30 to 2. So there's no rush, just again, come and go from the Sheraton as our hub between the State House and Rife Center between your meetings. And make sure that you're just enjoying the things that are around the room during the downtime. So you can continue doing your Find an Advocate Who bingo card and getting to know each other. Again, turn that into us when you complete it at the check-in table for a swag item. And make sure you're filling out your feedback forms. So after your meetings, when you have some downtime at the Sheraton, use those QR codes to access the form or come see us at the laptop station. And just make sure that you're enjoying yourself. Take lots of photos. We will have a couple photo ops set up around the room of the conference center. Make sure you're tagging your lawmakers with those social media handles that we have printed for you in your folders, and tag us as well using our hashtag OHFightsCancer. Don't forget to write your lawmaker thank you notes or their staff, whoever you meet with. And leave those behind with us so we can deliver them to their appropriate offices. And before you leave, please share your feedback with us too. We will have poster boards set up at the check-in table, basically where you can write down on sticky notes what you think went really well, what we could help improve on for future Cancer Action Days. So not only do we want you to report back how your meetings go, but let us know about your experience for the event as well, so we can just make it better and better every year. And we just thank you for your willingness to share your stories. There will be about 85 of us, and we're just so thankful to be able to have such a large presence at the State House this day together, and just know the impact that you're making on so many countless lives in Ohio that we may not even know. And we hope that you have a really impactful day and enjoy all the activities that we'll have set up again around the room for you to learn more about ACS CAN and to get involved with us beyond just Cancer Action Day. Just again, don't forget, this was from the guidebook, that we are nonpartisan and that your lawmakers are people just like us. They are constituents in your neighborhoods, your communities. And I know it can be a little intimidating if this is your first time, envisioning what it'll be like when you meet with your lawmaker. But remember, they really are there to represent you and your communities, and they are people just like us. And they really love the opportunity to get to meet with their constituents and hear your stories. And again, you are making so much impact by sharing your stories. So thank you. And with that, I will really open it up for any questions that you all have before we're together in person in a week. Anything we can help answer? Thoughts that you may have?
You did such a good job. No one has any questions.
Well, thank you. And again, lean in on your mentors in the next week. Practice, practice, practice. And again, thank you so much for all of the impact that you will be making by joining us. And let's all hope for fantastic continued spring weather and sunshine that we are seeing. And I look forward to seeing you all in person in a week. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you
Bye,
so
all.
much. You too.
Bye.
Bye.